The movie opens with Christian, a geologist, finally arriving home after work. As soon as he walks in, he finds his wife, Aidun, fixing a kitchen pipe instead of making dinner. Problems seem to pop up constantly in this house, so Christian has some exciting news for everyone. He tells the family they're moving into a new home because he's been transferred to another city. The announcement immediately lifts everyone's spirits. Later that day, Christian heads back to the geology center. He still has a few things to pack up from his office, and since it's his final day, he's also supposed to have lunch with his coworkers. Everything goes smoothly, and he's just about ready to leave when a sudden alarm echoes through the facility. He rushes over to the monitoring screens and discovers something unusual. The groundwater level has dropped dramatically without warning. The reading simply doesn't make sense. Christian becomes concerned, but his boss isn't worried. He points out that all the surrounding mountains look perfectly stable, and none of the sensors are detecting anything alarming. According to him, everything is under control. Christian leaves, but the strange reading refuses to leave his mind. He keeps replaying the situation over and over. Then suddenly, while staring toward a nearby mountain, something clicks in his head. A realization hits him. Without wasting another second, he rushes back to the geology center and tracks down one of his former coworkers. Christian explains that the problem may not be with the sensors at all. It could be the cables connecting them. Groundwater doesn't simply disappear. It isn't something that can just vanish into thin air. If it suddenly changes course underground, it creates friction and movement between rock layers. If the sensors aren't reporting anything, maybe it's because the cables carrying the information have been damaged. When Christian and his coworker head out to inspect the cables, they discover something disturbing. The cables are indeed broken. Back at the center, everyone is still treating it as a relatively minor concern. At best, authorities can issue a yellow warning, a low-level alert designed to avoid public panic. But Christian has a growing feeling that the danger is far greater than anyone realizes. For the moment, he puts those worries aside and goes to meet his children. Meanwhile, back at the geology center, George notices something unsettling in the incoming data. The sensors are behaving strangely, and the rock formations appear to be shifting. The information worries him enough that he immediately contacts his superior. After reviewing the readings, the boss becomes concerned as well. He decides to personally inspect the situation. He and another worker head directly into the mountain tunnels. At nearly the same time, Christian calls the center again, hoping for an update. George explains everything they've discovered so far. The news instantly raises Christian's anxiety. He rushes back and begins searching through old research files. Something about the current situation feels familiar. He remembers studying a similar event years ago. As he digs through the records, a chilling pattern begins to emerge. The mountains aren't expanding outward. They are moving toward each other, slowly pulling together. Christian immediately calls the geology center again. He desperately needs to warn his boss about what he's discovered, but there's a problem. His boss is still deep inside the mountain, and just as he and his partner decide it's time to leave, a powerful tremor suddenly rips through the area. The entire mountain shakes violently. Both men are thrown around by the impact and suffer serious injuries. Their communication with the geology center is completely cut off. Not long afterward, they notice water levels dropping in multiple locations. At that moment, they realize the horrifying truth. A tsunami is coming. Christian wastes no time. He calls his coworkers and demands immediate action. The alarms begin sounding across the city. Authorities start evacuating residents, and panic spreads almost instantly. Christian is standing on a crowded road with his daughter. Traffic has completely stopped. He starts shouting for people to abandon their vehicles and run toward higher ground. Far in the distance, the tsunami has already arrived. The wall of water is now moving fast. There aren't many options left. Then he notices his neighbor trapped between two cars. Without hesitation, he tells his daughter to continue moving uphill with the neighbors while he rushes over to help. Christian manages to free his trapped neighbor and starts helping her toward higher ground. But after only a short distance, he realizes the tsunami is almost on top of them. Thinking quickly, the two of them climb into a nearby car, hoping it might offer some protection. Seconds later, the massive surge crashes into them. The vehicle is swallowed by the flood. At the same time, the movie shifts to the hotel where Idun works. Knowing something terrible is about to happen, she runs from room to room, pounding on doors and warning guests to evacuate immediately. Together they rush outside, hoping to catch the emergency evacuation bus. But they're too late. The bus is already gone, and the tsunami is now directly in front of them. With no time left, they race back inside the hotel and head for an emergency bunker. A powerful rush of water smashes through the hotel's glass walls and floods the structure. Inside the bunker, Idun and her son secure every window and entrance they can find. The moment they finish, the power suddenly cuts out. Everything goes dark. Sometime later, Christian regains consciousness. As he slowly opens his eyes, he notices his neighbor beside him. She didn't survive the impact of the disaster. The sight leaves him devastated. Barely able to stand, Christian drags himself out of the wrecked vehicle and slowly climbs toward higher ground. Around him, survivors are gathering wherever they can find safety. There's only one person he's searching for, his daughter. After desperately scanning the crowd, he finally spots Julia. He rushes over and pulls her into a tight embrace. Then, looking silently toward his neighbor's husband, Christian doesn't need words. His expression alone says everything. He couldn't save her. Back at the geology center, George receives a call from the worker who had been trapped inside the mountain. The man delivers heartbreaking news. Their boss is gone. The entire center falls into shock. But Christian barely has time to process any of it. Now he's worried about Idun and their son. The tourist bus still hasn't arrived. Instead of waiting, he decides to go to the hotel himself. Leaving Julia in the care of trusted neighbors, he heads directly into the devastated city. Meanwhile, deep inside the hotel's flooded basement, conditions are becoming critical. Water keeps forcing its way into the bunker, and Idun and her son are physically holding the door shut to slow it down. Realizing they can't stay there forever, Idun tells her son to keep pressure on the door while she searches for another way out through the ventilation system. The moment she steps away, more water rushes inside. Her son becomes frustrated and scared. Idun is equally overwhelmed. They're not alone in the bunker. Another man is trapped there as well. As the water continues rising, panic begins taking over. He becomes convinced that if they simply wait for help, none of them will survive. At the same time, Christian fights his way through the flooded remains of the city. Eventually, he reaches a slightly elevated area and spots the tourist bus. His heart sinks. Inside, he finds one of his co-workers who didn't survive the disaster. But then, a different thought hits him. Neither Idun nor his son are there, and that means they might still be alive. That small piece of hope pushes him forward. He continues toward the hotel. Back in the basement, the situation has become desperate. Water has risen so high that almost everyone's body is submerged. Only a tiny pocket of air remains. The frightened man becomes increasingly reckless. Searching for anything that might keep him above the water, he forces Idun's son downward and uses him for support. The moment Idun sees her son struggling, instinct takes over. She intervenes immediately and manages to free her son from danger. For now, at least, he's safe. By this point, Christian has finally reached the hotel. He searches floor after floor. Nothing. No sign of his wife. No sign of his son. He never checks the basement because it's almost completely underwater. From his perspective, nobody could possibly still be alive down there. Defeated, he prepares to leave. Then he notices something. His son's backpack. Everything inside him freezes. For a moment, Christian believes the worst has happened. The frustration, grief, and helplessness become too much. He starts kicking and striking a nearby window, and that's when something incredible happens. The noise echoes through the building. Far below, Idun and her son hear it. Immediately, they realize someone is above them, and Idun is convinced she knows exactly who it is: Christian. Desperate to get his attention, she grabs a wrench and begins striking one of the ventilation pipes repeatedly. The metallic banging travels through the flooded structure. Christian hears it. He stops, listens, then creates another loud sound to pinpoint where the noise is coming from. At the same time, he wants anyone trapped below to know they've been found. But the danger isn't over. Water has now started flooding the ventilation system too. Christian dives into the basement and begins swimming through the submerged corridors. Below, Idun tells her son not to panic. She decides to attempt opening the basement door from inside. What she doesn't know is that Christian is trying to open the exact same door from the opposite side. The door bursts open. After everything they've endured, seeing one another alive feels almost impossible. But there isn't time to celebrate. Christian tells Idun to swim toward the staircase while he retrieves their son. The boy is overwhelmed with relief when he sees his father. Christian tells him they have to leave. Together, they start swimming. Then, the boy begins running out of air and strength. To keep him conscious, Christian shares oxygen with him underwater, giving him enough energy to continue. They push forward. Eventually, Idun reaches them and immediately pulls her son towards safety. After helping his son, Christian himself had run out of air. Without hesitation, Idun dives back into the flooded darkness. Risking everything, she locates him and pulls him to the surface. Christian is unconscious. No response, no movement. They desperately try to revive him. They clear the water from his airway and continue emergency resuscitation efforts. Again, and again, and again. But nothing happens. Eventually, even hope begins fading. The boy can't accept what he's seeing. In his mind, his father sacrificed everything to save him. Refusing to give up, He cries out and starts helping with the rescue efforts himself. One more attempt, then another, and suddenly, Christian gasps, his eyes open. The relief is overwhelming. After everything they've survived, being together again feels like a miracle. The family finally makes their way to the mountain, where the remaining survivors have gathered. Julia has been waiting there the entire time. Every passing minute has made her more worried. Then she hears a rescue helicopter approaching. Instead of feeling relieved, she becomes even sadder. She fears she may be the only member of her family left to rescue. She isn't even ready to board. Then, in the distance, she sees something. Julia sprints toward them. Christian scoops her into his arms, and for the first time since the disaster began, the entire family is together again. Soon afterward, rescue teams arrive and safely evacuate the remaining survivors.